Hello, everyone. Welcome to TypeScript. So we're going to stay like pretty high level. We're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to do a little bit of typing, but we're going to talk about what the benefits of static typing are. I want you to be able to enumerate some advantages to static typing. And I want you to have statically typed a TypeScript file. This is an intro to a topic that goes very, very deep and gets into a thing called category theory. And like this well gets complicated, but we can get started on your journey a little bit today. So let's talk about the first question. What the benefits of static typing are. So we've actually done a little bit of statically typed stuff. Ruby is statically typed. And let's talk about what we mean by that. So a couple different kinds of typing. JavaScript is dynamically typed. This means if I treat something like a number, it's a number. If I treat something like a string, it's a string. So the exact same thing could be used in any number of different ways. Now this also means that if I say a equals 1, and I change that to a equals false later in the program, that same variable could have two different types at different times. Totally allowed. And we do that kind of shit. We'll like take an array of things, we'll find the thing that we want, and then we'll save that object or value or whatever right back into the same variable. That's the kind of thing that we can do with dynamic typing. It cares a lot more about how we use something's type than what we set something's type to be or anything like that. So say that this is like JS. There's also statically typed. So with these, variable has a type and it never changes. If the value of some variable is an array, it's never going to be anything other than an array. If we say something's a Boolean, it's always a Boolean. It could be different Booleans, but it can't also be a string later. Actually, I take it back. Ruby probably isn't statically typed because you can change the type of something. It's stronger than JS, though. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then a like subtype of this, strongly typed. So when something is strongly typed, it's not only like Ruby, where like if something's a number and we want to treat it like a string, we have to cast it to be a string. Or like, remember back in Mod 1 when we were doing integers and floats? You had to tell something that you wanted it to be treated as a float. It didn't make it not an integer anymore. You had to tell it that I want you to use this in a calculation with a float. So with strongly typed languages, we're explicit about that in the code. We're saying, all right, well, this is whatever, and it's a Boolean, and it's a string, and it's this type of object. It's a dog. Ruby like infers that from how we're using it. If you assign it a string, it assumes you want it to be a string. If you assign it a whatever, it assumes that that's the type of that. So what TypeScript does is it takes JavaScript, which is dynamically typed, and makes it strongly typed. Why? Who gives a shit? Why do we want something to be statically typed?
If you properly implement it, it's easier to keep track of where things go wrong, because it will say, hey, you threw this into me and I threw up.
Exactly. Very well and vividly put. So there are problems that we only catch at runtime. Actually, let's talk about that for a sec. Two different phases in any program's life. Compile time and runtime. Common misconception, JS also has both of these phases, compile time phase and a runtime phase. Anybody know what the difference between those is?
Compile time when it converts it into machine language code, and then runtime is when it actually executes the machine code.
Bingo. All your computer understands is beeps and boops. It doesn't understand var equals whatever the fuck. At some point, this needs to get turned into beeps and boops. That's called compile time. Then, as the beeps and boops are like actively running, we're in runtime. So, a really common, let's see, mistake that you could conceivably make in JavaScript, I'll give you two examples. So if I do something like, I forget what language I'm in. I'm in a JS file, and I start writing stuff like Ruby. If I try running this, I'm going to get a compile time error. Check it out. That's a compile time error. It goes, I don't know what you're talking about. This didn't make any sense to me. Compile time error. A runtime error would be something like, if I have some object and I say some key is some value, and then I try to console log some object dot some other key. Like, that's going to be undefined. And then especially if I do some nested key, that's going to straight up error. It'll compile the code. This is valid JavaScript, but there is no some other key, and so it can't have a some nested key. So if I try to run that, womp womp, runtime error. TypeScript, and like strongly typing in general, prevents us from even compiling this. It goes, by the way, some object doesn't have a some other key, and it certainly doesn't have a some nested key. You want to fix that. And that also gives us the benefit of being able to like integrate tools into our text editors that'll tell us that as we're typing it, as like we're writing it with our keyboard. You go, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't do that. That doesn't have that. You can only do that if you're being explicit about what your types are. Compile time errors are a hell of a lot easier to catch and deal with than runtime errors. Runtime errors are hard to find. Ask me some questions about this.
So that's part of the reason why Ruby gives such good error messages.
It can. With dynamic typing, hard to give good error messages. I don't know what you did. the compiler is trying to figure it out just like you are.
So wait, runtime errors are where the syntax is valid, but the logic is incomplete or wrong?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there like a clue within the error that tells you which one it is?
Not in JavaScript, not really. You could say that you'll get a compile time error like as soon as you load up a file. So like think of like a browser app. If you load up the thing and you look over in your console and you see an error as soon as you load the file, it's a decent chance that that was a compile error. If you load it up and no errors, then cool, you didn't have any compile time errors. If then you try to do something in your app and it throws an error, that was a runtime error. And that's the red text in your console log. There's a third type of error, by the way. Anybody know what it is? Starts with an L.
Load error?
Nope, good guess. It's non-technical.
Logic error?
Correct, logic error. It was valid code and it executed without throwing an exception, but is not what you were expecting it to be. Static typing helps reduce those also. Other questions about what the benefits of static typing are? Cool. So let me show you how this works. So I want you to watch me. I'm going to delete this, and we'll do it together, and then you're going to do it. So I want to add TypeScript to this project. Again, I just made this empty folder. Nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. I'll even get rid of this. Cool, nothing in this folder. I'm going to make an NPM project. So I do that with npm init-y, step 1. All that does is give me this package JSON file. Helps me install node packages. TypeScript comes in as a node package. So you do npm install TypeScript. That's it. Cool. Now, to use TypeScript, the command is tsc, and since I installed it with node, npx, not m, npx tsc. If I want to see all the things I can do, you can -- help on it. That's all the TypeScript options. We're going to do tsc -- init. What that does is it makes this tsconfig.json file. This file controls all kinds of options about TypeScript. If you look at it, it's got some very basic starters. All of this stuff is commented out, but these are like all the options for TypeScript. How do we do JSX? Do you want to allow any JavaScript files or make everything a TypeScript file? What folder should I put stuff in after I'm done TS-ifying it? Do I also want to like check a couple of other things? Like something can't be assigned to null. All these options here. We're not going to set any of them today, but this just gives you a file with a real easy way to turn these things on and off. So to use TypeScript, make some file with a .ts extension. And if I want to turn that into a JavaScript file, because remember, TypeScript doesn't change the fact that your browser doesn't understand TypeScript. Your browser understands JavaScript, HTML, CSS. That's it. So we still need to eventually get JavaScript out of this. We're adding this extra compile step. And we're going to say npx tsc and then the name of the file. And when we do that, we get a JS file also. So I write TypeScript in this file, I compile it, and get a JavaScript file. Ask me questions about that process.
I see your TypeScript install command one more time.
npm install TypeScript, or I, same thing. So I did that. I made a tsconfig file, and we took a look at that. I made a TypeScript file. I ran TypeScript. Cool. So I'm going to blow that out. Make it again. All right, empty folder. Shelly, give me a first step here.
Sorry, I was a little distracted, so
That's
I'm
fine.
not the best person.
Okay. Jay, what's a first step?
First step was initting npm.
Yes.
So npm init-y.
Correct. That gives me this package JSON file that lets me install node modules. TypeScript's a node module, so I got to have something to start with here. Very cool. Logan, give me another step.
Installing TypeScript. So this would be the npx tsc.
Ooh, almost. This one's still npm. npm lets us install modules. npx lets us run scripts from modules. So it's still
So-
npm install TypeScript, like that.
I'm getting an error on this step.
Uh-oh, what's your error say?
I'm getting like 8 of them. It says npm err in red lettering, exclamation point, very scary. It says code enoself refusing to install package with the name TypeScript under a package also called TypeScript.
Ah,
Did you? Oh,
so you named your folder TypeScript.
yeah, I did.
That's why.
It strangely doesn't like that.
And like the reason for that is when you make like a package JSON file like this is all these things we're installing are. Like TypeScript comes in with a package JSON file. So if you wanted to make a node module that somebody else would install, you'd start this the exact same way. And you'd end up npm installing it the same way. So that's why it goes, well, hang on, I can't install myself. We got something hinky here. Excellent. Elliot, give me another step.
I wouldn't have a good guess. I didn't take notes while you were
That's
jotting
fine.
down commands.
That's what we're trying to figure out. So I've got TypeScript installed. I have this built out. I also needed something that configured TypeScript. Do you remember what I did to get that piece?
Added a created the TypeScript file.
Yeah.
So that it could be watched by, or is the creating the JavaScript file then? So the TypeScript file can eventually watch your JavaScript file?
So there's two different like TypeScript related things we're going to end up having in this folder. The first one is our configuration stuff for TypeScript. It's conceptually just like this one that we generated up here with npm init. The difference is npm doesn't init this config, TypeScript does. To use TypeScript, Elliot, do you remember the like, it's not npm. If you want to run a script that we installed, it's
NPX.
yes, very good. So npx TSC stands for TypeScript compiler, by the way. npx TSC --init. And just like the npm init thing, all it does is poop out a JSON file for us. Like that. Cool. Brian O, give me another step. Two left.
This is the one I missed. I'm up to.
You're fine.
So we got to create the TS file index.ts.
Yes.
And then
That's one of our steps.
and index.js.
Ooh, so
No.
the index.js, that's what TypeScript, that's what TSC is doing for us. Luis, do you know how I turn that TS file into a JavaScript file?
I have no idea.
All right. Let's see. Sydney, can you help Luis out?
So we need to run it with npx space tsc space index.ts.
Correct. And that's going to generate this JavaScript file. So we npm init -wide. That made our node project. We installed TypeScript. We initialized TypeScript. We ran TypeScript. Questions about that process?
I got a unknown compiler option in it after my npx tsc init command.
It's --init,
That's what
which is different than it is on npm. npm, it's just init by itself. TSC, it's --init. Otherwise, it's looking for a file called init to try to compile. Other questions about this process?
So this works a lot like when you would set up Lodash or Sass, right?
Yes, exactly like that. Same kind of process. And this kind of process, it's the same in Go, it's the same in Ruby, it's the same in Java. Like bringing in third-party libraries generally works kind of like this.
So is it kind of like DLC?
It's just like DLC. That's exactly what it is. Especially if it's a DLC that like gives you a map editor or something like that. I'm gonna keep that. Libraries are like DLC. That's fucking great. Libraries are DLC. Other questions about this process?
Could you reiterate the uses for npm versus npx?
Absolutely. NPM is for package management. So we use it to go to look up stuff on npmjs.com, like Lodash. It's kind of similar to GitHub, where it's looking up something on this site and downloading it for you. npm install Lodash will go find this package and throw it on your computer. The TypeScript one, same kind of thing. It's going to go to this site. It's going to find this thing. That's how you install it. So npx, in contrast, is going to look inside your node modules folder for this .bin, and it's going to try to find a match for one of these and run that script. So trying to think of another common npx command, view. So if I also installed view on this, I can npx view create. I can do all kinds of like scripts that that come with view. And npx is going to look inside that .bin folder for whatever I do. I probably could have picked something that wasn't enormous, like Vue CLI. Cypress, the testing tool, same kind of thing. Mocha, Jest. All those have little scripts that we want to be able to run. It's relatively new, so you'll see a ton of like older tutorials and stuff that has this. This came out like 2 or 3 years ago, but it's really nice. So now these are all the scripts that I can npx. NodeMon, Vue, Yarn, all kinds of stuff. More questions? Cool. Your turn. Even if you like got this set up successfully, make another folder. Get some muscles around this. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes. See if we can do all those steps again. We need to make a new node project. We need to install TypeScript. We need to configure TypeScript. We need to make a TypeScript file. We need to turn it into a JS file. Give it your darndest best shot. We're gonna do it one more time together afterward. 3 minutes. Go.
TypeScript, oh. I was about to start a beat, so I was gonna.
Never miss an opportunity to do some scales.
What are they doing right now?
They are setting up TypeScript, getting it installed, following the steps.
Hopefully not the steps in the doc, right?
Fuck that.
The docs suck.
Another minute. All right, pencils down. So let's do this again. I'm going to make a new folder. CD TS lesson. Let's say Kelsey. Give me a first step.
First, run npm init y dash
Thank
y.
you. Thank you. TJ, what am I doing next?
Sorry, unmuting was a struggle there. Next is going to be npm I TypeScript.
Thank you. Gordo, give me another step.
With npm install TypeScript or I'm sorry, npx tsc dash init.
You're beautiful. Cool. Then back up to the top. Jay, what you got? What am I doing next?
Oh, you're gonna touch an index.ts.
Thank you. And then Logan, bring us home.
mpx tsc index.ts.
Thank you. All right. We're using TypeScript, folks. So now that we got that set up, and hopefully have a, start to get like a broad concept of what static typing gives us, let's see what that looks like in TypeScript.
Just out of curiosity, I got mine to work, but I totally missed the npx tsc init step, but all my other commands seem to have worked.
Yeah, it'll like infer a default config. Don't do that.
Oh, okay. Should I restart them?
No, don't worry about it. Just set up the config now. It always looks for that file when you run a TypeScript command. Cool. So I am in my index.ts file. So here's how I can add types to things. To variables, we do const is awesome, colon, whatever the type is, then equals true, like that. I am telling TypeScript that explicitly what type that should be. Now, there are good reasons to not do this in your TypeScript files, but I think this is good practice for us right now. In functions we have two big types to think about. We have the types of our parameters, but what's the other type that we have to think about?
A return.
Our return value. So I might have something like function sum, and then I need to say what things get passed into sum. So like number 1 is a number, number 2 also a number, and then to indicate what the return type should be after the colons, well, that should be a number also. And here's like a great example of TypeScript helping us out right off the bat. The reason I have a red X there, check out that error down at the bottom. A function whose declared type is neither void nor any must return a value. I'm not returning a value. So it can't be of type number. That's the kind of help that we get with static typing as we're writing these programs. So I can return number 1 plus number 2, and it's not mad at me anymore. So if I do something like sum 1 and 2, not a problem. If I do sum 1 and Fred, argument of type string is not assignable to parameter of type number. The compiler caught the error before I did. And like this one is especially insidious in JavaScript, because if I did this with just regular JavaScript and I try to do something like that, that's totally valid JavaScript. It's going to give me back 1 Fred as a string. It's just going to try to concatenate it. That's not what I want. Static typing to the rescue. Ask me some questions about this.
Can you stack these, like have TypeScript and Lodash, or no?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Okay.
Now, where this gets tricky is that if I want to use an external library like Lodash, I also need the types for Lodash. Because like, how does it know that the return type for map is always an array? And an array of what? Like makes a difference. So there is a thing called like a type repository. TypeScript types. Lodash. So, oops, actually gave it to us right there. At types/Lodash will also give us all of the types for Lodash. Basically, every popular package, somebody's figured out the types for it. If they didn't, you need to come up with the types. And that's why Damon doesn't like TypeScript. It can get gnarly, and at some point it starts feeling like you're doing a lot of work for very little benefit. I get it. But lots and more every day, lots and lots and lots of things are in this at types thing. And so you can just get used to installing the types along with whatever you're installing. But yeah, your buddy's janky package they made, your thing with 3 stars on GitHub, might not have types already.
So would you just like import those types?
TypeScript handles that for you. So what we would do if we wanted to use Lodash is npm install Lodash and then at types/Lodash. And now when I use Lodash, it's going to like it's going to know what the type should be. So like let me find a Lodash function we could use. We go down to like clamp. So clamp like gives you a range, and then we'll clamp it down to that range. So like if it's supposed to be between 1 and 5 and you give it 6, it just makes it 5. So if I go over into my index.ts file and import clamp, and bring in clamp. One of these things that's expecting a number, I can say clamp 1, 5, and 7. Cannot find name require. Ah, shit. Oh, that's why. So like your errors like instantly get as helpful as Ruby's are. Cannot find name require. Did you install type definitions for Node? No, I didn't. So it doesn't know that require is like a thing in Node. Because even though we set up like a package JSON and we're using NPM and NPX and all this kind of stuff, this doesn't have to be a Node project. It'd be the same with a vanilla browser JavaScript. It would be the same with a React app or whatever else. We're just using NPM to install these tools. So no, I don't have at types node. So I can npm install at types node. And all of a sudden, it's not mad at me anymore. And was able to correctly infer that using this Lodash thing will give me a number back. And if I try to do something like assign, which generates a new object. That should be mad at me. I don't know why it's not. Let's see. Maybe create. Trying to make it mad at me. Ah, shit. I can't get it to bark at me. Anyway, that's the general idea with something like that. Ask me some more questions about this.
So do people tend to set expectations or like rules whenever they're using TypeScript for like every function that they're writing and
Yep.
like every variable? Okay.
Yeah, so that TS config, that's like, that's your rules that you want to follow for the project. Other questions so far? Cool. Let's see if we can get this far. So I want you, don't use some other thing. Something that concatenates strings, put if statements in here, play around with it a little bit. But wherever you declare a variable name, colon, and then what its type should be. Notice that I didn't do it here. I'm using variables here. I'm declaring them here. I'm declaring this one here. That's where the type definition goes. You use it the same way you've always used it, like here. If I'm declaring something, that needs a type. Cool. Another 3 minutes. Play around with it a little bit. Have fun. And then see if it compiles. If it makes a JS file, you did it right. Cool. While you were working on that, did any new questions come up?
So what makes it convert it to the JavaScript file?
That TSC command. So TSC is TypeScript compiler. And so you're like, compile my TypeScript into JavaScript.
Should it be doing that as we're typing it or on save? Because my JavaScript file still is empty.
Cool. So you have to run the command again. So you do a npx tsc index ts, and it should poop out a JavaScript file for you.
You use var. That's supposed to happen?
Yep. Well,
Okay.
that's its business. That's configurable in that ts config file. So one of the things in there is target. So it's targeting ES5 right now. Let and const didn't show up until ES 2015. That's why. So it gives you those targets. If we make that ES 2018 and run it again, all right, so it was var up here. Let's see what it turns into. Here, run it now. Oh, kept it var. Interesting. I wonder if I do ES next, if it'll be different. ES next is like the beta for JavaScript. See if there's anything else I might be able to turn on. Nope, kept it. So some of it is that, like, the reason that we do const and let is similar kinds of things as this. It doesn't like run more efficiently or whatever else. It keeps us from shooting ourselves in the foot by like reassigning stuff that we didn't intend to reassign. We don't need to do that. It kind of doesn't matter how we declared it. So the TypeScript compiler is already checking for that kind of stuff. If you didn't accidentally reassign anything, we're kind of done. Other questions about TypeScript?
So I got an import statement at the top of my TypeScript file that I'm pretty sure I didn't write or you wrote. I'm assuming that's from something I wrote. It's like import visit function body from TypeScript.
So that's probably, your text editor probably added that. You probably have a linter or something like that that's like, ah, I got you. You meant to do this. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
What more of these code translator programs are you hiding back there? We got that.
So this is this type of thing. Like we say compilation, it's technically transpilation. Compilation is going from a high level of abstraction to a low level of abstraction. Transpilation is same level of abstraction, but like presumably different features. Sass, it's a transpiler. TypeScript, transpiler. There's others. So like another common one is template engines. Like on my personal site, I have these handlebars files. It allows you to do like the same kind of thing as JSX, if any of you have done that. Allows me to do if statements and loops and use variables and all kinds of stuff, which comes in handy on things like these talks. All the talks on my website have the same format to them. All these pages. So I wrote a template. If I have links, then show this. And then for every one of those links, show one. Now the problem is, this is handlebars. Browser doesn't understand handlebars. So I do a very similar kind of thing where I read all of the talks. Where is it? I read all those in. I do some shit with the dates. And then where is it? I turn Markdown into HTML and like a whole bunch of other stuff. And then I write those as HTML files. And so I end up taking a bunch of data. These are all the talks on my site. It's just a giant ass JavaScript object or array. And then after I run my script, it turns into all these HTML files. It's another example. Yeah, man, they're all over the place. More questions about TypeScript?
So when I try to run my index.ts file, it gets really angry at the fact that it is TypeScript. Like it doesn't like
Are you
the
trying to run it with
colon.
Node?
Yeah, is that wrong?
Nope. You're running the JavaScript file. Because yeah, Node doesn't understand TS either. Your browser doesn't understand TS. We write TS, compile it into JavaScript, and then run that.
Is this used prevalently in the industry, or most people just ignore this?
TypeScript? TypeScript's getting pretty hot, man. There was another one of these compile to languages 6 years ago called CoffeeScript. And everybody got into CoffeeScript. It's like Sass, but for JavaScript. There was a whole bunch of extra things. Before we had fat arrows, they gave us fat arrows. They also gave us skinny arrows, the destructuring, the rest operator, the spread operator, like supercharged JavaScript. And then JavaScript just added all of those things as features. And everyone went like, well, why the fuck am I writing CoffeeScript? And it was like, it was ugly. Because like for a year, GitHub was littered with these abandoned CoffeeScript repos. It was like, everybody just kind of gave up on it. I thought that was like this close to happening with TypeScript. And so I was real like, fool me once on this shit. But this has lasted many times longer than CoffeeScript did. It has grown in popularity over the years. Most of the frameworks are written in TypeScript. So like you don't have to use TypeScript in them, but Ember's TypeScript under the hood, Angular's TypeScript under the hood. Vue and React probably are. It wouldn't surprise me if they were. But yeah, TypeScript's huge. In 2 years, it's probably what this program is going to be based on.
So like, what's the biggest benefit of using TypeScript versus JavaScript other than, you know, better error statements and stuff like that? Like why use it?
None. Like that itself is a huge benefit. Because imagine this is more than a 7-line thing. Imagine this is some enormo thing that thousands, tens of thousands of people are working on. Your odds of calling a method that doesn't exist on something that somebody else wrote are very high. And the amount of time you're going to spend tracking that down is a lot. If like as you're typing it, your text editor goes, oh, by the way, that method doesn't exist. That's nice. Or even better, if it goes, that method doesn't exist, but these 10 ones do. Did you mean one of those instead? That's the kind of thing we can get with strong typing.
Wouldn't it also help alleviate some of the constant console logging to check what your pieces are?
Correct. In fact, like static typing also alleviates the need for a lot of tests. There's a whole category of shit that you don't have to test if you're using static typing. Another way to think of this is writing good JavaScript without types. You still need to act like it's statically typed. Your brain is just the compiler. If I use TypeScript, I don't have to think about that anymore. I got a computer to do a boring, repetitive task for me, which is what they're for.
So what is the best way to execute our code then?
Run the JavaScript file. So npx tsc my TS file, turns my TS file into a JS file, and then I run the JS file. Same thing in the browser. You write your React code or whatever the fuck, run the TypeScript compiler, then run all the JavaScript that comes out as a result.
So you have to run the compiler every time you update the file?
I'm doing it the slow way. So we look at our help options for this. Watch. This will like give you a range of things that you can watch. And if any of them changes, it just recompiles. It's like NodeMon, but for this. And if you're using something like React, that needs to be built into your Webpack config. Luckily, there's an option in Create React App to just set all that up for you. Other questions?
Okay, so it's every time. It's the joys of running 2 commands instead of 1.
And how? So to give you an idea of where this rabbit hole ends up going, so we did this with built-in types, Boolean, number, string, that kind of thing. We can also make our own types. We can do something like type person like that. Now I can tell whether or not somebody is of type person or not. Hey, it's missing the following properties from type person, first name and last name. Wonder if it'll let me add another one. If I try to add something that's not on that type, it gets mad at me.
So you don't have to declare when something is an object. Oh, never mind. You did type up there.
Exactly. I made a new type. I can also do this OOP style. I can say that such and such has to be an instance of whatever class. I can do interfaces. Interfaces are like a core part of OOP programming that are just not a part of JavaScript. They are a part of TypeScript. So I can say, cool, this class needs to implement this interface, which means that it has the following properties and the following methods. I'm not telling you what they are. I'm just telling you that for it to be a valid cat, it has to meow.
So that kind of like cleans up some of the like the OOP stuff that just got shoved into JavaScript, where you can
Yes.
like assign an age even though there is no age in like the
Yes.
definition of this object.
Yes. You can do real OOP with JavaScript and TypeScript. And like where this gets fucking crazy is when we start adding in generics. So the way a generic works is, I mentioned like, okay, well, we have an array of what's? An array of people. Cool. But this person is a student, and this person's a teacher. I have three, like in this call, me and Christine are here. I have 2 teachers, I got 6 students. All of them are subtypes of people, and like that becomes a type. That's where this starts getting heavy. It's a little while before you get there though. And this is like enough to get you started running down this road if you want to go there.
So do you write in TypeScript or JavaScript or what? Like once you get good at TypeScript, you basically just stop writing in vanilla JavaScript?
Yes. Well, like as the project allows, if you're writing TypeScript, everybody has to write TypeScript. But yeah, you'd have a TypeScript project. And like, that's just the language you're using for that.
So you can't have some of it be JavaScript, some TypeScript, and then the TypeScript gets converted?
Ah, it's configurable. Allow JS. They tried to make this so that you could do very incremental adoption. Like if you take an existing JavaScript project and just change all the extensions to TS, it should just work. And then you can gradually add types as you want. There's also a type called any that, unsurprisingly, allows you to use any type for that. It's effectively not type checking if you...
So can you use that with arrays?
You could. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to use, I am expecting an array of students.
Like in one of my test examples, I was splitting a string. So when I declared like a variable inside of that function, I had to say like, split string equals string and then like closed array brackets. So like, what if it was like a string of numbers or an array of numbers and strings? What would that be
I
written as?
believe that's like that. So
To accept numbers and strings?
So that's called a concatenated type. Did I do this right?
I think it wants to be capitalized.
String, probably right.
Array.
There we go. And then if I try to put a number on there. Sorry, dog, you're looking for an array of strings. I can't remember the syntax for compound types off the top of my head. Oh, never mind. It's called a union. So I think it's like that. Yay! Got it. So it has to be one of those 2 types. And these can be like their own thing also. So we could say like, or of type person.
I even want to know what an array of arrays looks like.
I like, just like that. So there's more to this, but there you go. You can install and set up TypeScript. You can use built-in types to type check something. And now you know the rest of the story. Any last questions? Thank you very much. Hopefully this was helpful.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle.
Okay, cheers.